Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, we begin a new volume of Lekutei Sichos, Chelek Chof, volume 20, and we begin today with the first Sicha on Bereishis, page 1, right at the beginning, which will discuss the first Rashi in Torah, why the Torah begins with Bereishis bara Elokim, a Rashi that the Rebbe spoke about many times, and here we will see a new original pshat in this Rashi, Apichsidis. The shir today is being learned l'nishmas Rabbi Yosef ben Yamin ben Rabbi Menashe Koltman. Auf Bereishis bara Elokim bringt Rashi the Maimer von Rabbi Yitzchak. At the beginning of the Torah, where it speaks about the story of the Eibusher creating the world. So Rashi brings the statement that Rabbi Yitzchak said, Lo hoya tzarech lahaschel es haTorah elo me'achodesh hazeh lachem. The Torah should have not began only from hachodesh hazeh lachem being the first mitzvah in the Torah. Why does the Torah begin with the story of Bereishis, the Eibusher creates this world? The answer is Mishum Koyach Maisav Higid La'amai. The power of his work, Hashem tells his people, the Yidden, Losses Lahem Nachlas Goyim. When the Eibusher gives them the inheritance, the heritage of the Goyim, that the Yidden should be able to respond and explain why this land belongs to them. As Rashi explains in his Mavayah, as the mit verentfetment the taine von Umasaylam. With this, we can answer to the claim that Goyim say regarding Eretz Yisrael. And they say as follows, Listen, matem, you are thieves. Shekivashtem arza is shiva Goyim. You have conquered the land from 7 nations, and therefore it's not your land. Hey, Maimrim Lahem, the Yidden respond and say, Kala Oretz Shalakadosh Baruch Hu. The entire world, the land is all Hashem's. He created it, and gave it to whom he sees fit. And now the Eibusher gave it to the Yidden to conquer and take it from them, from the Goyim. This is the reason why the Torah begins with the story of creation, so we have an answer to explain why Eretz Yisrael belongs to Yidden. Now from dem diek haloshen, lehoye tzarech lahaschel es ha-Torah chulu, umatam pasach beBereishis. From the choice of the word here, that the question is that the Torah should not begin with Bereishis. And the answer is coming to explain why does it open, why does it begin with Bereishis. Not like the expression that it says in some of the Midrashim that address this, where there it says, wasn't necessary for the Torah to write the story of creation in any place. Umatam kosav mibreishis. And why does the Torah write and begin, or write actually, from Bereishis? Or similar language. So Rashi here is highlighting the fact that the Torah not only tells us the story of creation, but specifically opens with this. Is mashma, so it seems, as the shaila in dem maimer, that the shaila that Rashi is asking over here in this statement of Rabbi Yitzchak is nicht as a Parashis from Bereishis bis Achodesh. Haben bechlal nicht gedacht stehen in Torah. It's not questioning the fact that these parashiyas from Bereishis until Achodesh should not have been written in the Torah at all, nor as sie haben nicht gedarft sein der Onib von Torah. Rather, the question over here is, even if it has to be recorded in Torah, but it doesn't have to be the opening, the beginning of Torah. Weil as Chodas HaTorah hat gedarft sein von Achodesh hazeh lachem shehi mitzvah rishayna shenitzava by Yisrael. The opening of Torah should be with mitzvahs. That's what Torah is mainly. And therefore it should open with the first mitzvah of Achodesh hazeh lachem. Und wie bald as the teretz oichav der shaila is, now the answer also regarding this shaila of why the Torah not only writes the story of creation, Bereishis bara Elokim, but it begins with this kuntais, so it comes out as kedei zu shaila zayin zer taina listem atem chulu, in order to refute and answer the claim that Yidden are thieves, is nit genug as Bereishis bara Elokim vet stein ergetz von Torah. It would be insufficient if the story of creation would be written somewhere in Torah. Nor does dav zayin das cholov in Torah. You have to have this story of Bereishis bara Elokim specifically in beginning of Torah. That's what you see here from the words that Rashi says. Is tamua, so this is very difficult to understand. Afiloi Bereishis would gestanden noch Achodesh, even if Bereishis would be written later, after the mitzvah of Achodesh, But Menachke was der Inyan, as Kol Haaretz Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Bara Nesana Chulu, that the whole land belongs to Hashem, and He created it, and He chose to give it to Yidden. Is von was wollt es nicht gewähnen, kein Teretz Maspik, und es darf sein, Pasach Bereishis. Why, if we would see in Torah, the Psukim, Bereishis, Bara, wouldn't we have enough of an answer, and the Torah must open with the story of Bereishis to give an answer to the argument of Umm of the nations of the world. Another shaila here in Sif Beis, the Rebbe asks, Ich darf verstehen. Another thing that's difficult to understand regarding why Torah opens with Bereishis. Wie bald, as lei hoyet tzarech lahaschel es ha-Torah, or lichtov es ha-Torah, ela ma'achodesh hazelachem. If a Torah should not open, or even write the story from Bereishis, but rather ha-chodesh hazelachem, the first mitzvah, as mitzvah Torah, leim darfir as chol zayin nit from Bereishis, as far as what Torah represents. So it should not open with the story of Bereishis, other das hat bechlal dit gedacht stehen in Torah, or it wasn't even necessary to have it written in Torah at all. Or befrat, as the Bala Maimer is as madgish beloshen loy ella, especially as it's being said here in a very strong way, that it wasn't necessary at all to open Torah only from a Chodesh. Was weiß, dass das ist liyikuve. This is an expression. When you write the term loy and ella, the Gemara says that this means that this is something that this is the only way it could be. There's no other option. Wie kommt es? So then how is it as tzalib shaylo zayin atayne von u'misa'elam, that in order to refute the claim of nations of the world, soll man beiten dem seder von bekolshke meisav zayin in Torah shebiksav. That because of this, we're changing and adding in the order of Torah of Torah shebiksav. Why would this be enough of a reason to change Torah itself? Nachmer, the question is furthermore, if dem volt lechoire gewen genug, wenn man geht über dem Empfer balpe mit der, even if it is extremely important to have an answer to this question or to this argument, but wouldn't it be enough if the answer would be something that would be given over as a tradition from one generation to the next? Azoivi klal is Torah shebalpeh, similar to the way it is with generally Torah shebalpeh, which is a tradition given over from teacher to student in every generation. And we find in Gemara where it records a story about an argument that Goyim came to say that the land belongs to them. As Gvir ben Psise hat verämpft die Teine von Bnei Afrika. So Gvir ben Psise responded to their argument, and here it was Bnei Afrika as Eretz Canaan Shalanahui. That Eretz Canaan belongs to us. They claim that they are the descendants of Canaan, and therefore Canaan, it belonged to their ancestors. And what answer did he give them? He gave them an anderas bara. He gave them a different answer, which is not clear, explicit in Torah Shebiksav, but it was another idea. He explained to them that Eretz Yisrael belongs to Yidden because if Eretz Canaan was cursed to be a slave, and therefore whatever a slave owns belongs to his master, so therefore it belongs to Yidden. That was the response he gave, and this is not something recorded explicitly in Torah Shebiksav, but it's an answer that he gives Balpeh. And similar, when Bnei Yishmael, the descendants of Yishmael and or Keturah from Avram Avinu, of Ze'etaine, that Eretz Canaan Shalonu v'Shalachem, when they claim and argued and said that Eretz Yisrael belongs to the Yidden and to them as well. So, but here, for some reason, the Torah has to record in Torah Shebiksav the point to answer the Goyim. Why is that? Is the fun gedrungen? So from this it's clear, as the inyan from Pasach Bereishis, the fact that the Torah opens with the story of Bereishis is not an emphasis to the Umm. This is not just a response to the nations of the world. No, das is an inyan was is negeya zu Yidden Gufe. This is a matter which is relevant for Yidden themselves. In Zeyir Torah v'Avedis Hashem, in their Torah and in their serving Hashem. And not only that, it's extremely important that it's here in the beginning of the Torah. Was damit wird man euch verstehen dem Tam. With this, we'll also understand the reason was in dem Pasuk, was wird gebracht in Maimer Rabbi Yitzchak. Why here in the Pasuk that Rabbi Yitzchak quotes, Koyach Maisav, Higid La'amai, Losses Lahem Nachlas Gayim, that the Eibishter is telling the power of his work and creation in order to understand that the Nachlas Gayim, that the inheritance of the Gayim belongs to Yidden, wird nicht demand that das ist an Empfehl zu Messiah. The Pasuk here is not saying that this is a response to the nations of the world. Nor rather, higid la'amai. What the pasuk is saying over here is that the Eibishter is speaking to the Yidden, Amai, his people, and the Eibishter is telling them about the fact that he creates the world and Eretz Yisrael belongs to them. Das heißt, what this means in other words is that koyach ma'asav higid la'amai is negeya Yidden allein. This is something which is relevant for Yidden to know, for their avodas Hashem. Kedei as Yidden sollen nicht trachten, as durch sehr kibush von Arzes Shiva Goyim seinen sie listen. In order that Yidden themselves should not make a mistake in their avodas Hashem when they're serving the Eibishter and they're engaging with matters in the world, that they shouldn't think that they're the thieves, that they're stealing from something that does not belong to be in their avodas Hashem. That zelt men sei gleich in Aschalas HaTeire, and therefore the Teire relates and tells Yidden in the beginning of the Teire as Bereishis bara Elikim, that the Eibishter created the world and the whole entire world belongs to the Eibishter, and therefore this is part of their avodas Hashem. As the Rabbi is going to explain now here, in great length, exactly what is this point that's relevant for the Yidden in their avodas Hashem to know that the Eibishter created the world. Okay, so the Rabbi here begins the explanation in Siv Gimel with the point that the Tzemach Tzedek says about this Maimer of Rabbi Yitzchak. What is he coming to say? Wir haben das verstehen, leiten Bier Pnimi von Tzemach Tzedek in dem Maimer. So we'll understand this with explaining a deeper understanding in this pshat, in this question of Rabbi Yitzchak that the Tzemach Tzedek said. Kivashtem artzais shiva goyim. So when the Goyim come and argue and say that you have conquered a land that belongs to the 7 nations, main peruchnius, what this is referring to on a spiritual level is the kibush, the conquering, which is the aveda for Yidden in the aratzis, the serving the Eibishter here in the land, in the world, or bechlal in Welt, in these lands over here in Eretz Yisrael, but in a broader sense, and by extension, bechlal, in general, the whole aveda of Yidden here in this world. B'shas Yidden sind in Kevish, they nemen und nutzen in Yonei Ha'olam. When Yidden conquer, they engage and utilize matters of the world, divrei reshus, things that exist and belong in the world, that are not an object of a mitzvah, not fulfilling a mitzvah, l'shem shemayim, engaging with the world, but all doing it just for one reason, for the sake of heaven. In other words, a person can live life and do things that are reshus. That area of reshus is his, and here he is to be healthy and eat and drink and come and go and do. And here this is outside of kedusha. But when a yid conquers and includes that even these areas are also all just being done for one purpose, for the Eibishter's sake, to give a person the energy that he needs and to be healthy and so on to serve Hashem. What happens is you're taking these areas in the world and you're transforming them. You're taking them away from being part of the existence in the world, which is goyish, which belongs to the nations, and you even transform them that they shouldn't be mundane either, nor tashmishe kedusha. They become things that serve holiness, davasha b'kedusha, an object of holiness, kedusha, even more than just an object of holiness, but kedusha itself, biz kadshe kadoshim. Until ultimately a yid could even take these matters and the objects of the world, which are the shos, and elevate them to the point that it becomes kadshe kadoshim, the holies of holies, the highest level of kedusha. And of them is the taina for numis, and it's regarding this that the nations of the world argue and say, "Listamatem, you are thieves." These Sachen, welche gefinden sich tachas memshelas hagoyim, these objects and these portions of the world that are found under the control of goyim, they're here, they're part of the existence of the world, in the mundane aspect of existence in the world, zeren al kolponim vachedik. So they are at least just mundane, maybe even lower than that, as the Rabbi mentioned before, goyish, but at least they are mundane, and therefore taina diomis kaherentzezeh. So the nations of the world argue and say that what's their status? Where do they belong? What do they express? What part of life and the interaction of a person in them, what is this supposed to consist of? Here, this is the part of life and this is the part of the world which just exists in a mundane fashion, outside of the possession of Hashem. Al derech wie steht in Medrash. And this argument is similar to what the Medrash tells us regarding Yaakov and Esav. As Yaakov and Esav haben sich zerteilt mit Eilemis. That Yaakov and Esav, that were fighting about this world, Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba, the world to come. And they came to an agreement. They made a division. Yaakov had genommen Olam Haba. Yaakov took Olam Haba. On Esav Olam Hazeh, and Esav took this world. So when you're living in this world, where are you? You're in the territory where this belongs, that a Yid should act and behave like Esav, which is not associated with anything holy. And if so, is loitu misha'ilam. So according to the nations of the world, di avoide from them kibush, here, serving Hashem, conquering and transforming and including even these portions of the world, when one broadens the boundaries of holiness into such a place, aninyan from gzela. This is a thievery. You're taking something which belongs in a certain category. This is, in the world, it's mundane, and you're including it, you're bringing it into the Avodah of Kedusha. It has to be split into two different worlds. There's the place where the Eibusha is revealed and expressed and is there, and that belongs in Kedusha. But then there's the mundane aspect of the world, which is Weltish, Goyish, and that doesn't belong in Kedusha. Of them is the Remfer. So for this, the answer is in the first pasuk of Torah, Bereishis, Bara Lekim, that Eibusha creates this world. As Mimcho HaKoil. Everything comes from Hashem. Kol ha'aretz shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Hi. The entire land is Hashem's. Hu bra v'nosna l'asher yasher be'einav. He created it and gave it to whom he sees fit in his eyes. Which means as follows. Das was die Sachen haben sich gefunden. Kaidem avodas Adam in Reshus von die Umais. The fact that you have all these portions of the world that were found before he comes and engages and elevates them. They're found in an area which is Reshus, which is just permissible and mundane. Chelek upon him, from Chelek upon him, just to be mundane in the world, is narval b'ritzaynai nasna lahem. This was the Eibusha's desire that it should be granted to them, that it should exist in this fashion. The fact that it exists in such a way where there's no godly expression here, and there's no holiness, and it's just mundane, that itself is Hashem's desire. This was Hashem's desire, as besibas hachet von Eitz Hadas, that through the cause of the sin of Eitz Hadas, soll es gegeben werden. That it should be granted to these nations of the world, that they should exist on such a level where they seem to be unassociated to holiness. Aber das Gufe is bichdei as danach beritzaynoi not lamehem v'nasna lanu. This itself was with the intention, with the purpose that later, that with the Eibusha's will, it'll be taken from them and it'll be granted to Yidden. The Eibusher will, it's the Eibusher's desire as well. As Yidden sollen zurücknehmen von sie, die Sachen und umkehren in dem Gvul HaKedusha, that Yidden should take back all of these objects and every area in the world that's here existing in a mundane fashion and bring it and include it and reveal that it's part of the boundaries of Kedusha, of holiness. This is given kaidem achet, as it was before the sin of Eitz Hadas, where the Eibusha's presence, the Shechina was here below in the world. Durch der Aveda kibush for Yidden, through the Aveda and the conquering of Yidden, when Yidden engage with the world, l'shem shamayim, and elevate and do things only for the sake of heaven. So that is the very purpose of creation itself, and this is revealing the truth of Bereishis bara lekim, that everything belongs to Hashem. Und das ist echt der Pirish von lehoyet tzarich lahaskal es ha-teire l'machodesh hazeh lechem. With this we have a deeper understanding of what the shaila here, that Rabbi Yitzchak says, the question, that the Torah should begin only from machodesh hazeh lechem. Torah is hecher from Maaseh Bereishis. Torah is representing a godly revelation which is much higher and much greater than the level of godliness that's here in creation, that comes to create the world. Kailoloich von der Aveda mit Maaseh Bereishis in Yoni Eilam. And this includes even the Aveda. The fact that a Yid could serve Hashem and engage with the world, Aveda Sakibush, this Aveda of utilizing the aspects of Rishus in the world to include it in Kedusha. Torah itself is really above and beyond such a level of connecting to Hashem or serving Hashem in the world. This is eich bepashtus by the Modem Oivid, as you see and understand this very simply by a person that serves Hashem. When a Yid learns Torah, oder tut a mitzvah. When a Yid learns Torah or fulfills a mitzvah, is be'eis ma'isa reingetan in a dovisha b'kedusha. So at that time, what is he involved in? He's involved in an area which is pure, absolute holiness, removed of anything mundane in the world. Und his hecha von in Yoni Eilam is completely above matters of the world. By contrast, when a person is involved in his own personal needs, Even if he's doing it with the right intentions and he's doing it for a holy purpose, for the Eibishter's sake. However, it remains activity which is his, and in his personal ways and his personal things that he's doing. In Yoni Arishus, matters that are permissible for a person. And furthermore, these are things that a person desires and wants and needs for his existence, to sustain his health and so on. And this is something that the Nefesh Bahamis, the animal soul of Yid, wants and needs. So therefore, the ultimate, absolute godliness is not seemingly revealed over here. Where do you have absolute godliness? In Kedusha, when a person is doing something which is in the framework of a mitzvah and absolute holiness. So therefore, Torah, which is a mitzvah, which is that level of connection, should open with a Chedesh Elochem, which is talking about that level of connection to Hashem, which is completely above the limitations of the world. Not with this kind of Aveda, which the Torah is coming to speak about, the value of the Aveda of Bereishis, Bara Lekim, that Mimcha HaKoil, that even the Welt itself is part of Hashem, that's much lower. Let them be, now according to this explanation here of the Tzemach Tzedek. So this actually only strengthens this Shaila. So what's actually the reason why the Torah does open with Bereishis, which refers here to this point in the Aveda Vayid in the world? Since this Aveda of conquering and broadening the boundaries of Kedusha into the world is nidriker from Torah and mitzvahs, is on a lower level than when you learn Torah and do a mitzvah. Is mistake as das muss stehen in Torah, kidei mizal wissen as das as darf sein die Aveda. So yes, even if it's true that this has to be written in Torah, in order that it should be known that this Aveda is necessary. On es is nit ken inyan von listem. And this is not in any way something which is a thievery, that you're taking something that does not belong to the boundary of Kedusha or to Hashem, and you're utilizing it in the wrong way. No, this is expressing the truth of Mimcha HaKoil, that even here, the Eibishter created this as well. But the point though is, this is still a much lower level than Avedis Hashem. Vi kumte, so then how is it, aber, as das al zayin, the aschala o psicha von Torah, that this is the beginning and the opening of Torah, with this point. Was Kedime Beseder in Torah, when you find something that comes earlier in Torah, Weist of Kedime B'mayla. That means that this is something which must be on a higher level. There's something greater about this kind of Aveda when a person serves Hashem in Inyani Arishos. But how could that be if this is something which is always going to be limited, and the framework of this Aveda, the premise of this whole Aveda is the I that the person wants and needs and serves Hashem here within a place where you can't bring the absolute connection to Hashem there. It's in Masecha, in that framework you're finding you're also connecting to Hashem. So how is this the opening, the beginning of Torah, which represents the absolute truth of the Eibishter, which is above the existence of the world? So here in Sif Daled, the Rebbe begins with an explanation on a deeper level to understand the advantage that there is in the Aveda in Inyani Rishos, in the existence of the world. And there's a few things over here, a few points. Eine von den Biurim, was man kann sagen in dem. So one of the explanations that can be said about this is as follows. Afal pi, as Avedis HaKibush, balosh nachsidis Avedis HaBirurim. So yes, even though it is true that this approach of serving Hashem here to conquer, to broaden the boundaries of Kedusha, or the language that's brought in Chassidus, which is the Aveda of refining and elevating the godly sparks that there is in all aspects of the world. In Seder HaMadregis, so looking on the order of levels of how much the absoluteness of truth of Hashem can be revealed, is Nidiriker, is in Seder HaMadregis, Nidiriker von Limud HaTorah v'Kiyum HaMitzvahs Kanal. So this is lower than learning Torah and doing a mitzvah, which expresses the absolute truth of Hashem. This is something which is related to an existence which says that I exist and I want. Von deswegen, but nevertheless, is the kavana al yena, b'briyas ha'olam, the Eibish's purpose in creating the world. When you go all the way back to the source of everything, before there's any kind of seder of where there's more expression of Hashem and where it's further and you don't see that much expression of Hashem, but if you go back to the very deepest intention and purpose of what the Eibishter himself created the world for, Nisava Kadosh Baruch Hu liyas le'dir b'tachteina. The desire of Hashem is that the revelation of the dwelling of Hashem should be here below in the lowest place. Was meint, wie der Alter Rebbe teaches up. which means, as the Alter Rebbe explains, atachten she'ein tachten lamata mimeno. Tachtein means not just a place which in some degree is tachtein, doesn't have godly revelation there, that's the definition of tachtein, but it should be in the very lowest place. Tachteinim in the Medrash, which doesn't specify, means that it's the very lowest place where there's absolutely no revelation or expression of truth of Hashem, and there a Yid brings Hashem. Und die Kavane für Tzachais in Avedas HaBirurim, this intention of Hashem, of creation, is fulfilled in Avedas HaBirurim, in this Aveda of engaging with the world and refining and elevating the world itself, mer und tiefer wie durch Limud HaTorah und V'kiyam HaMitzvahs, more and to a greater extent and even deeper than when a Yid learns Torah and does a mitzvah. Because this creates a dwelling for Hashem, even in that area which is rishus, which is permissible, where you see that this is something which is a person's own personal things. This is an area which is real tachtainim, it's low, it's far, in the sense of that you don't see any godliness here whatsoever. It doesn't express the truth of creation in any way. And here the Yid brings the Eibishter in this lowest place. This is the kavana of creation. This is one point regarding the kavana of creation that Hashem desired when He created the world. Now there's another point there. Al derech zeh, similar we can say, is da an ilui in avedis in der avede benefesh adam. There's also an advantage over here in this avede in Inyani Rishus, in the lowest aspects of the world, that also relates to what aspect of the person, of his soul, is being invested in this avede. As be'avedis habirurim, when it comes to this kind of aveda where a person engages with things in the world and he refines it and brings it into connecting it back to godliness, to get this done, to bring godliness even in such a place, it draws from a person, it demands from a person a much deeper commitment and investment than one that sets aside times, specific times, where now he's learning Torah and he's doing a mitzvah. In order to accomplish, that even when one is not found in the four amas, in the place where it's now a place and time and zone of just holiness. Now here a person is involved in mundane, worldly matters. He's busy with himself, things that he needs. That even then the person should remain attached and connected to holiness. To the point that all of his permissible matters are done completely and only for the sake of heaven, or actually there's an even greater level than this, not just for the sake of heaven, but you have the knowledge of Hashem there in the very ways itself. So to put it very simply, you have to be more observant, you have to be more connected to Hashem, to have that connection and commitment that's there constantly, consistently, in every area, no matter what the person does. You have to have a deeper connection to Hashem, and you can never separate. And therefore it never gets changed, it doesn't even get weakened, even if now you're not learning or doing a mitzvah, but even when you're involved with mundane and worldly matters. So this is another mila here regarding the person himself. What level of commitment does this draw out within the person himself? As the Rabbi brings in the Ha'ara, that this is the mila of the Baal Tshuva that's greater than the Tzaddik. And das ist the time was Pasach Bereishis. So this is the reason why the Torah opens with Bereishis, which represents this kind of Aveda, where a person is dealing with the world itself. Because the ultimate and main and purpose of creation, to make a dwelling for Hashem in the lowest place. In a place where there can't be anything lower than this. So this is accomplished specifically through this Aveda of Bereishis Bara, of refining and elevating the lowest things, the lowest elements of the world itself. That's the explanation of why the Torah opens with this Aveda, because true in Seder HaMadregis, if you look at where there's more expression of godliness, where less, in Torah and Mitzvahs, you have more of an open expression of this is Hashem's will, this is Hashem's Torah, above the existence of the world altogether. But nevertheless, on the other hand, as the Rabbi explained here, the great advantages that there are, dafke in the Avodah in the world, Pasach Bereishis. However, here in Sifei, the Rebbe will bring us to a deeper understanding, a deeper level in what the Maila of the Avodah in the world is. Der Bier is aber nit maspik. This explanation is still insufficient. If we look, let's go again now, based on this new pshat here that we have in what Rabbi Yitzchak is really talking about, the Torah opening with Chaydish, which should have opened with a Chaydish, or the Torah that opens with Bereishis. If you look into his words, we'll see that there has to be a deeper point there. From the language that he says here, what's the reason why the Torah opens with Bereishis? And that is that this is as an answer to the argument of the nations. Is mulchach, from this it's clear as Pasach Bereishis, that the point of the Torah opening with Bereishis is the far is because was lulei zeh, not for the Torah opening with Bereishis, afilu ben Bereishis, volt gestanden später in Torah. Even if Bereishis would be written somewhere later in Torah, volt noch geblieben an Ort of Tainus ha'umais as listematem kanal sifalef. There still would be room for the argument of the Goyim to say that Eden are thieves. That's the main point that we're coming to answer by the Torah opening with Bereishis. And this is including, according to this new pshat that we're saying here, that we're discussing this kind of Aveda of Birurim, of Kibush, of conquering and broadening the Gevul of Kedusha into the existence of the world, that this is all coming to make a point that Yidden are not listim, they're not thieves. However, al pi anal kum tais. Let's go back now again to the point that was explained before. What is the reason why the Torah opens Bereishis? As the time was Pasach Bereishis is nit kedei zu shoyle sein die Taine von Listamata. According to the explanation said before, it comes out that we're actually not coming to refute the argument that Eden are thieves. No blois zu maktim madgish sein die Meile von Avodas HaBirurim Bereishis bara legabe der Meile von Avodas HaTorah und Mitzvahs HaChedesh. The main point of here is that the Torah opens with Bereishis bara to highlight and emphasize the point that this Aveda, where you're refining and elevating from the permissible matters in the world, has an advantage more even than the Aveda of Torah mitzvahs. In other words, it's understood, even if the Torah would not open with Bereishis, it's understood that there's Torah mitzvahs, but that there's also a maila and a value to the Aveda of Rishus, Kol Masech L'Shem Shemayim. But the Torah opens with Bereishis to highlight that this has an advantage, it's even greater. But that's not what Rashi is saying in the language of Rashi. The Torah opens with Bereishis to make the point and to refute the argument that Yidden are thieves, that this is an Aveda that has no place. Why is Avodas HaBirurim an Aveda that has no place? Adarabah, this is an Aveda that's very important. It's just that you would think it's secondary. So the Torah is coming to say no, that this is actually even more important for the purpose of creation and so on. So something over here, according to this new pshat here, doesn't fit into the language of what Rabbi Yitzchak is saying here. So therefore, based on this, the Rebbe will now introduce a deeper understanding, a further point over here. What are we talking about when it says there that there's an Aveda of conquering the world, of conquering the land? Das verstehen, al pi hayiduas in yoni ha'olam and in dort zwei sugim. So we'll understand this according to what it's known, that when we're dealing over here with this kind of Aveda, to broaden the boundaries of Kedusha and bring it into the matters of the world, there are two categories to this. Aleph, number one, as mentioned before, Divrei Rishus. Those areas that are all permissible, the things that a person needs and has and does, to conquer and to refine and bring godliness there, is durch der Aveda von Kol Masech L'Shem Shemayim, when a person does it for the sake of heaven, he brings the knowledge of Hashem, the awareness of Hashem there in that area. And also obviously understood, limudat Torah v'kiyum ha-mitzvahs, when a Yid learns Torah and does mitzvahs, so then he ultimately takes objects of the world and different areas in his life and elevates it into absolute holiness to the point of Kodesh HaKadoshim, as the Rebbe said before. That's one area of the world. But here there's another point. And this is the additional point here that the Rebbe will focus on, what the Pasach Bereishis is about. Those things that are forbidden. And the reason they're forbidden is because the godly energy that's in them, or the energy of their existence, is from Gimel Klippus Atmeis Legamri She'em Bem Toiv Klal. They are from absolute impure klippos that have absolutely no good in them at all, and therefore they are disconnected from anything godly, not only in an open way, but even to be used for a godly sake, is impossible, because they are so disconnected, they're impure completely. But now the truth is that even these objects in these areas of the world, which are completely forbidden for a yid to engage in because of they're disconnected to such an extent, but even they do have a godly spark which creates them, sustains them, and gives them life every moment. There's nothing that can exist in the world that doesn't come from the source of Hashem, from holiness. No, it's rather the reason why they are so disconnected and they're forbidden. Their oira kedusha from dinitzaitis is zei betachlis hahelam. The godly sparks, the godly connection and life that's in them is completely and totally concealed. And they azoi to such an extent as nor zelten, that very seldomly, nital derech hareiv, not usually, this is der hatayre medaberes, the rule is Torah relates and applies and talks about a person's aveda the way it is commonly. It's possible that something forbidden can be elevated and used and become permissible, and that would be if something becomes nullified by a majority, if something which is forbidden falls into a pot of food where there's 60 times against it and therefore it becomes batal. But this is only something which is after the fact, which it can become mutter, chulu. But then there's something else, and that is zedainis nasa kezachi is durch tshuva meyave. When a yid that sinned and then he does tshuva, so this tshuva transforms the energy that was there in these zedainis and these premeditated sins, and they themselves become elevated into kedusha. And and things that are similar like this, but it's aber al derech haragil. Usually they kennen is baraveren on oile zayin kedusha. They cannot be elevated and be refined to be included in holiness. And therefore these are things that are forbidden, that a yid cannot engage with them because there's no godliness that you can reveal over here. So even if in Yon, the Divrei Bereishis, that I've explained before, is a place where it's masecha, it's drachecha, but nevertheless it is a place and a level where the purpose and the connection to Hashem is easier to access, because it's a level where godliness is not completely concealed there. It can be utilized for a godly purpose. But then you come to a place where on any level you don't see any connection to Hashem at all. Even though the truth is that this is all being created every moment from Hashem, but nevertheless it's so concealed that you don't see in any revealed way that it's even possible at all, even a yechelis to come and include this in godliness. So now we can say, as the ikketaine von Listemate and Beruchni is that the main argument of the Goyim that come and argue to Yidden that you are thieves in the spiritual level is beneged die Sachen. It's regarding these areas of the world. Was bescheiches zu sei haben die hat die Teine an Ort apiteire. And when it comes to these areas that are totally awesome, and Yid has to stay away from them, there's a big place for their argument according to Torah. Warum a Yid, was ein Anhag is apiteire, is nicht shaykh zum Biruf und Dvarim Ma'asurim, because a Yid that behaves according to Torah, it's impossible to refine and elevate and reveal godliness in this place, which is forbidden. As darf sein surmeira. The only way to reveal what Hashem wants with what you should do over here in this is to stay away from them. In Yane Isser darf man deiche sein. The way to elevate them is by this itself, by staying away and not engaging with them. Das heißt, which means as al pi Torah zenen ze ki'ilu v'nit in reshus von Yidden. Torah itself is saying that this is an area of the world that's as if out of the possession of Yidden, no bereshus ha-klippah. They're in the reshus of klippah. Right? Since the Torah is saying that the Aveda consists of what? I mean, this itself is their birur by staying away from them. But since the birur consists of the fact that you're staying away from them, that itself expresses a certain truth of Hashem, that the absolute will of Hashem, that if there's something that does not fit with His truth and His existence, then it's out. Then it has no right to exist and no purpose. But nevertheless, in the end of the day, this is a kind of birur by being deiche. So you're saying that there's something in the world that exists and remains, and it's outside of the territory of Yidden that they cannot engage and elevate it. Und der Rebbe, so therefore, when Bereishis volt gestanden noch a chodesh. So here comes the main point. When Bereishis, so even if the Torah would write about the Eibusher creating the world. But it wouldn't be written in this order. It wouldn't open with Bereishis. If it would be written after HaChedesh. Unachmer li'ikuve. And more so, as the question is put, this is something which it must be this way. The only way to begin Torah is with the mitzvah of HaChedesh Zelachem, which means mitzat Torah atzma fadet sich as iras chala zal zayin van HaChedesh. Torah itself demands that it should open specifically with the mitzvah of HaChedesh. Das heißt, because what would be the message here? As es wird gewähnt, der Eifen Avedes HaKibush va birurim, nor al yedei limud ha-Torah v'kiyum ha-mitzvahs. So that would mean that a Yid, Torah extends and gives the power for a Yid to be able to refine and conquer and elevate only things that are in the framework of learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. So volt kivashtem arz ha-shiva goyim, but now conquering lands of the 7 nations, which refers to Rishus, as was said before, but now even more, was is kailol and bitter from the nitzaitzis, shabegim klippus atmeis, and this means to reach and even go into the place of the territory of the complete impurity, and to refine even the sparks of godliness that are there, given gzeila. So then this would be gzeila. This is something that the Yidden are stealing. They're taking from a place that does not belong in possession of holiness or to Yidden. That is what the tain over here is. And that's why it's being said in such a strong fashion, because when it comes to this area of Dvarim Asurim, Torah demands that a Yid should stay away from them. That's the only way you can be Mavada, by being Deiche. A Yid cannot elevate them and engage with them. So now, the Sivav, the Rebbe explains, here we see a deeper answer to this question. This is actually a real tain al pi Torah to a much stronger extent. Die Taine werd verämpft damit was Pasach bereishis. So this argument is answered by this, that the Torah opens with Bereishis, and here this makes the point of how a Yid has the koyach to elevate and use even these things, ultimately that they will be included in Kedusha. As mitzat Torah kennedy nitzaitzis von dvarim asurim nitnes baraver. Yes, it's true that from the perspective of Torah, these sparks that are in such a low place, in places that are forbidden, cannot be elevated. And so in the question of loy hoyet tzarich la'aschal ella, that remains true even after we give the answer. That is, from the perspective of Torah, there's that boundary, there's that limitation. But the level of godliness, when you can go back to the source, to the Eibusher himself, which is even higher than the level of godliness that's expressed in Torah, gegeben geworden der koyach of tshuva. Here is the source of the power of tshuva, which is granted to Yidden. Was tshuva meyave, when one does tshuva with love, tutoif as these dainis al veren zachias. What this accomplishes is that even premeditated sins, their energy should be elevated and included to become merits. Kemaim b'chazal, as it says in the Medrash, as dafke ven shalu lakadosh baruch hu chaytem ha'oinshei. When the Eibusher himself was asked regarding a sinner, what's his punishment? What happens to a person that sins? The Eibusher responds, that through tshuva he'll be atoned for. But when this question was asked to Torah, when you deal with a level of godliness which is already expressed through Torah, this is a lower level, and over here there's certain boundaries to this, how far you could extend and reveal the truth of Hashem. When you come to the ultimate source of truth, to the Eibusher himself, which is deeper and higher than what's expressed in Torah, over here you reveal the truth to a much greater extent than even these sparks that are in such a low place, in the forbidden place. It comes out and it gets connected back to its source. What's the explanation of this? For this? Going back to the point of Bereishis bara alakim, ultimately everything is Hashem. Even these forbidden things. Ukanal, as mentioned before, as a kiyum v'chayis, is from the nitzaitze kedusha shebehem. Their entire existence and their life is all from the godly spark that's in them. And even they are also in the possession of Hashem. Since the very essence of Hashem is hecha von die gedorim von Helem v'gili, is above and is not expressed not bound by, revealed or concealed. When you speak about any level of expression of godliness that's formulated to one degree or another, has some kind of definition, so that concept of godliness is expressed and revealed in a place which expresses and says godliness in one way or another. It shows some kind of connection, some kind of a use, some kind of a positive connection that it has to Hashem. That's when you speak about levels of expression of godliness. But when you talk about the very essence of Hashem, that's beyond any boundary and is not expressed by anything, then an oich di nitzaitze kedusha, so even these holy sparks, and welche the oire leki is betachlis hahelim. So over here, there's no expression, there's no revelation of godliness, but nevertheless they are miyuchad mitim. They're one with Hashem. This is the essence of the truth of Hashem that's not expressed. Adarabah, the very fact that it can't be expressed, that's where the very essence of Hashem, that's where, only because it's the essence of Hashem, that's why this reveals the real truth of what they are. Und von dorten nimmt sich die Koyach of Tshuva. This is the source and the power of Tshuva, Omer HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what the Eibusher himself gives. Zum Mevare sein, euch die Nitzaitzis, und sei Meile sein LeKedusha, to elevate these sparks and bring them into holiness. However, since Torah itself is light, which means Torah reveals the truth about everything, der Gilui von allen Yane Kedusha is durch Torah. The revelation of all matters of holiness comes through Torah. Euch die, was mitzad atzmam, sind sie heche von Torah. Even those levels and matters that are really higher than Torah, it's Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but who tells us about this? It's all in Torah, in the Medrash and Torah. Vet euch der in Yinat Tshuva. So even this idea and this power of tshuva, which here, the point of the tshuva is that it's able to reveal the truth of the Eibusher to a further extent, the truth of the essence of Hashem, even in the refining of the sparks in such low, forbidden places, this is expressed and it's explained here in Torah itself. That's really what is being expressed over here with the Pasach Bereishis. Now here, the Rebbe will explain this concept. Das ist in dem besteht der Chiluk zwischen die zwei Nischayis Hanal Sifalef and Maim Rav Yitzchak. With this, we understand the difference of the two versions that there are in the statement of Rav Yitzchak. Aleph umat matam kosav mibreishis. Why does the Torah write Bereishis at all? That's one version of the Medrash. But the way it's brought in Rashi, Beis umatam pasach bereishis. Why does the Torah open with Bereishis? It's necessary for the Torah to open up with Bereishis. So these are two different levels. In order to explain the value of refining and elevating matters of the world, which are the shos, which are permissible, is genug kasav me Bereishis. It would be sufficient that the Torah writes the story of Bereishis, of creation, as esved geschrieben in Torah b'chlal. It's written in Torah. Even though there is a great advantage to this Aveda, more than even the Aveda of Torah Mitzvahs, as explained before in Sif Dalet, that's the reason why the Torah writes it first, it's showing in a certain mile that it has. However, this is a kind of Aveda that Torah itself says that it's an extension of what Torah itself says is right and good. Torah is mechayiv the Aveda. Torah itself is obligates, it demands this kind of Aveda that a person should serve Hashem, not limited only to Torah mitzvahs. Kol masechel Hashem shemayim kol derech echad is a pasuk in Torah, it's a psak din in Shulchan Aruch. Torah itself demands not only Torah mitzvahs, but also this kind of Aveda. So therefore, in the framework of Torah, there should be a certain order, a certain seder madreges of what comes first, what comes second. The priority is Torah and mitzvahs, and then Torah itself also demands to extend and bring what Torah and mitzvahs, the truth of Torah and mitzvahs, further also into other areas. So ultimately, this is something which belongs to be written in the Torah after the main subject, the main point of Torah, which is the mitzvah. By contrast, when it comes over here to engaging and elevating in the world through tshuva, even those the areas, the sparks of godliness which are in forbidden places, is nitapi seder Torah. This is something which the Torah itself says you can't. In the order of Torah, it just can't be done. Even a person that comes along and says that he will sin, but then he'll do tshuva, tutan aveda, he's doing an aveda, u'mischayiv ba'einish l'fiyerach ha'pagam. And there's a punishment for the blemish that he causes. Even by saying that he'll do tshuva, but there's a blemish here, meaning Torah says you stepped out of what Torah demands. And therefore over here, in order to clarify and come and explain what this concept is, that a Yid does have the power to even go into such a low place to conquer the nations of the world, in a place which is forbidden, muss es stehen in Psiches HaTeire. The only place this comes out is in the opening of Teire. Wie bald der Koyach of them Bereishis von an Ort, was is Hecher von Teire, since really the source of this power comes from a place, from HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, which is higher than the level of godliness expressed in Teire. So really, this is higher than Teire. But then, as the Rebbe made a point before, everything is expressed through Teire. Kommt es der Rebbe in Teire Gufe als Haschala sub Psiches HaTeire. In Teire itself, this is said in the beginning and the opening of Teire. But really, it begins with Bereishis Bada regarding this point of engaging and elevating even from the places that are forbidden. This comes from a source which is even higher than Teire. It's out of the Seder of Teire. It's written before even mitzvahs because it comes before the power and the level of what Teire itself is. So here the Rebbe concludes in Siv Zayin and brings us back to the language that Rabbi Yitzchak actually used, and he said the pasuk of Tilim that he brings to give the answer of why the Torah begins with Bereishis. Und das ist was Rabbi Yitzchak sagt. And this is what Rabbi Yitzchak says, Ma tam pasach be Bereishis. Why does the Torah open with Bereishis? Mishum koyach maisav higid la'amid not lasas lam nachlas goyim. This is Hashem saying the power of His work to the Yidden, specifically to the Yidden, to give them the inheritance of the goyim. Zu Yidden Amai. This is a unique power that was given to the Yidden, to his people. Is nimshach geworden, higid, lashon hamshache. It's not only the Eibusher relating, but it's also drawing down. On ibegegeben geworden, der koyach maisav. The Eibusher gives Yidden the source, the power of his actions. Der koyach v'nitzitz aleki, was is done alle maisav. The godly energy that there is in all of creation of Hashem, including Gimel Klippas Atmeis in the forbidden areas. Varam vibalt as Yisrael v'kudshu b'richa kol echad. This power of tshuva is in a Yid, because a Yid is one with Hashem himself to the highest degree. Even higher than the expression and the oneness of Torah with Hashem. As it says in the Medrash, as Yisrael kodmu leTorah. That Yidden are before, higher, deeper connected to Hashem himself than Torah. That's why the Yidden have this power of the Eibusher himself that's higher than Torah. And this is the power that's expressed through tshuva when a Yid serves the Eibusher in this world, and even premeditated sins get included and elevated in the merits in Kedusha. That is the idea of koyach ma'asav higid la'amai. However, since a Yid's Aveda in this world is with a certain order, is Eichazai in Inyan Tshuva. Even regarding the subject of Tshuva, which is going out of order and out of what Torah demands, and to a higher level, even in this itself, there's a certain Seder. B'tchilas Haveda, when in Tshuva itself, in the beginning of a Yid's Aveda of Tshuva, when the Darge von Tshuva by Menschen Atzmai, when the level of Tshuva by the person himself is noch in an Eifen, as fehlt, as ein Aveda besteht, and abreißen sich von Ra. His tshuva, what's the nature of the tshuva? There are two aspects to tshuva. The first and the lower level of tshuva is when a person is very strongly connected and attached to the world. And his tshuva consists of the fact that he has to tear himself away and he has to run away from the existence of the world. Is the tshuva b'hargashasai an inyim b'dugmas gzeila. This is the level of tshuva where the person experiences that he's tearing himself away, he's stealing, he's going away from the existence of the world. He's taking, he has to, this naturally he's in a place where here in the world where he's connected to Dvarim Asurim is outside of Kedusha. That's what he feels. And he has to take away and run away and bring it into Kedusha. This is a kind of Aveda where a person is stealing. But then a person elevates in his tshuva to a higher level of tshuva. When I come to the Hechere Darge in Shuva, Varuach Toshav Allah Lekim Hashem Esana, the level of Shuva where the Neshama is returning to its source, to Hashem, which is granted the Neshama to the person. As der field, as in sein Shuva, die Tnur von Umkennen sich l'shar shoyim mekayrai. Here, all the person senses in his Shuva is, he's returning to the absolute truth. He's returning to his source, to Hashem. Bis zu Lekim Hashem Esana, shar shoyim mekayrai arisha, in the very highest source from where he comes from. That Yisrael v'kudshu b'richa kol echad. Weil bei ihm is mei sheirish nishmase wie sie is miyuchad mitol lekim Hashem Esana. The tshuva does not consist of the fact that there's a Welt that exists outside and he's connected to that and there's something other than Hashem and he has to steal and bring back. Adarabah, all the Yid senses is his tshuva consists of the fact that he's being unified with the ultimate source of Hashem, Yisrael, and the Eibusher and the Yidden are one. and Hashem, that is one. It's a different kind of tshuva. That's a much higher level of tshuva. The same also plays out in the experience of how the person is refining and elevating these sparks of the forbidden things into kedusha, which a person refines as demel teherter. Now, what a person will sense and experience, this is not something that there's something outside, and he has to come and he has to return from outside and bring back. Over here, once you come to the source of absolute truth of Hashem, here all the person senses is, it's all Hashem. Everything is absolute truth, it's just godliness. Und die ganze Yeride von der Nitzeitz ist melchatchile gewähnt nor b'shvil aliyah. And this entire situation where there is something in the world that exists and seems like it's outside the boundaries of holiness, it's all right off in the beginning, just another way of really expressing the absolute truth of Hashem. It's Seiser Amanas Livnois, an expression used in the Medrash that the Eibusher demolishes with the intention to rebuild, to reveal the absolute truth in this place. As a Yid zol zei tzirik, meilezen l'sharshim mimkayim durch tshuva. That a Yid should then return and bring it back to the source through tshuva. Now when a Yid comes to this level of tshuva, which is expressed here in this Rashi, so what this accomplishes is, by Yidin der Ilui von tshuva, this brings a Yid to the level of tshuva, was mokem shebal tshuva aimdin, ein tzadikim gemurim yechaylim lamed by. You come to a level of tshuva that tshuva is even greater than the aveda of tzadikim, which is in the framework of Torah. Und the far is oich tzadikaya, as asvi b'tiyufte. Even tzaddikim will come to this level of tshuva okairos chazal to yedin benigay to yedin tag, or which is really the guidance of chazal that tell every single yid regarding every single day, as the Gemara tells us, kol yom of b'tshuva. The entire lifetime of yid in this world should be with the aveda of tshuva.